Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Colonel Jared Veneta, the commander of the DISA Pacific. I've got a lot of DISA Pacific support in the room. I'll do a couple of quick introductions. So starting over here, I have Major Jimmy Payne, my field office chief out in Yokota, Japan. Sitting next to him, Lieutenant Colonel Rios. She's my field office chief out in Okinawa. Ms. Chung in the back, my technical director. I got Mr. Jose Garcia. Jose, you can stand up. Representing my field office out in Guam. And I think that's it. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Park, Ms. Jennifer Park, my field office chief out in Korea. So right here is our first island chain support, if you got any questions about that, but a lot of team here in the room. Additionally, we're really lucky to have some senior executives from our DISA headquarters back at Fort Meade. So Ms. Sharon Woods, who runs our J9, our cloud computing, and Ms. Tanisha McMillan, who does our J6. DoD Net is probably what you would most recognize under her portfolio. And they'll be able to take some of your questions afterwards. As I start this brief, I'm going to be up front. My target audience is the vendors, okay? So for the government, the military, the civilians, the government civilians, I talk to you all a lot. I'm mainly focusing this on the commercial side of the house. So where are my commercial vendors? You can throw a hand up real quick. Okay. I'm targeting this this brief at your level, and I'm going to do a little bit of a DISA 101, not to insult your intelligence, but I'm not assuming folks understand DISA and what we do, both the headquarters, and then I'll zoom in on DISA PAC, and then I'll give you at least my unsolicited advice for you on how to do business with DISA and how to penetrate our big DoD bureaucracy and get your products in front of us, whether you are an integrator, a hardware software provider, or a consultant, what you need to do to come and talk to us. And then we'll take some questions for me or either of our senior executives or any of our field offices at the end. Sound good? Okay, next slide, please. Okay, big overview of DISA, the DoD's IT support agency, okay? There has to be one integrator across the DoD looking and synchronizing what the services are doing. Because left to our own devices as services, we will take our Title X money and focus very much on our service requirements. There has to be somebody that is integrating across the entirety of the DoD to include all of our defense agencies. DISA is ideally suited to be that agency. It's a difficult role, one we have to constantly explain and justify requirements to the rest of the entirety of the DoD, not just the services, but one that's absolutely a necessity in the future fight, because we are going to fight joint. Each individual service cannot field their own solution and be successful in the future. So I view DISA as a global integrator across the entirety of our enterprise. And also thinking about it as an enterprise, a global enterprise, vice, individual, COCOM specific areas of operation with separate networks and separate environments where we do things differently. We have to start thinking about a global fight, because that's what we're looking at in the future. Next slide, please. History of DISA from the 60s up to the present, so the different organizations, different capabilities that we've taken on over the years, leading to our current state as that IT service provider. Next, please. Okay, analytics, testing, cloud contracting, network connection, spectrum service, all these things fall under the DISA portfolio and are captured under a lot of different agencies. I'll talk a little bit more specifically about what DISA PAC does, because it touches some of these areas later in the brief. Next. Okay, so a lot of the recent support started with 9/11, moving up to now with our data centers, our clouds, our mobility solutions that are spread across the agency. But most people probably know us as the long-haul transport providers, the data center, the cloud brokers for the DoD. Next. Okay, kind of an overview of the agency on the left. So the 11 data centers, the 10 internet access points, 2 in this theater, the circuits, the mobile devices, and the contracting actions, and then the personnel and the money that's spent annually. Okay, so senior leader comms, mostly via our White House communications agency, but also SecDef comms. A lot of the work that we're doing focused on our offices in the Pentagon and in the National Capital Region. Next. All right, footprint of DISA, the amount of civilians, military. You see, if you look at it as a global perspective, it's not a large organization considering the mission. The way we get around that is relationships with each one of our service components and partners throughout the theater, relying on them for some of the technical expertise and end user support at the edge, and then we coordinate with them, inspect them, set standards, and then make sure that we're working together to provide that global network. Little more detail on how DISA is arrayed throughout the globe. So starting on the left, which you know is JITC, our Joint Interoperability Test Command out in Huachuca and in Maryland. And then our DISA contracting organizations, DITCO. Probably the most unsung element of our organization, because when you look at 80% of the joint force residing in the continental United States having to deploy to a theater, in this case the Indo-PACOM theater, there are a lot of circuit actions that have to happen as the joint force descends on the theater. Some of that will happen right now in competition, but a lot of it's going to happen in crisis and conflict. So services are going to have money, they're going to have a plan, DISA is going to have money and a plan, but having knowledgeable experts on your staff who understand the DISA plan and the scheme of maneuver for the COCOM and the service components and are able to work with the Asian telcos to quickly activate those circuits is absolutely vital. I've made sure all of our DITCO PAC team is read in on the Indo-PACOM scheme of maneuver, the O plan, so they understand what the components are trying to do and can provide a better answer and outcome for them. But absolutely critical is being able to execute that money in support of our plan in a timely manner. Our Network Operations Center. DISA PAC is one of the Network Operations Center. DISA Cent, DISA Global, our DJOC at Fort Meade, and DISA Europe are the other big ones. These are kind of how we operate and defend the DODIN throughout the globe. And then the data centers, the 11 that are listed on there, fall under Ms. Wood's portfolio. 2 here in the Indo-Pacific, Ford Island and Yokota. And then field offices. So every combatant command has a DISA presence. Some of them have our Network Operations Center like CENT, PACOM, and EUCOM, but all of them have a field office that are out there figuring out what that COCOM needs, advocating, developing a plan, and getting that DISA support to the COCOM. Next. Okay, so postured for the future. These are our lines of effort. They're also contained, so these are lines of effort for General Skinner at a high level for DISA. They're also contained in our DISA PAC lines of effort and vision document. Next, please. So prioritize command and control. This should go without saying, as a combat support agency, we are here to support command and control for each one of the combatant commanders, their sub-unifieds, and their theater service components. So enabling that infrastructure in place so that commander can see the fight and execute. And that's what is going to be different about this next fight. I tell my staff, I remember being in Fallujah and watching then General Mattis have a map on a big board of cardboard sitting on top of a Humvee, and we can hear rifle fire in downtown Fallujah, and they're looking at the map. That's not going to exist in this theater. The way they're going to get that battlefield visual is via our network, via our common operational picture. We're going to have a secure network that they can look at, trust what they're seeing, and know that they can command and control off of that. This theater is simply too big, too vast for our commanders to travel to one spot and get that feel. So they're going to travel around via our mobile communications, but they're going to use our network to see to. They're going to use our network for fires. They're going to use our network for logistics. They're going to use our network for every warfighting function. So prioritizing command and control is a huge one. Drive force readiness through innovation. We have to change how we provide C2. The COCOM and service-based networks of the last 20 plus years are not relevant for the future fight. We're entering into a global fight that crosses geographic combatant command boundaries and that crosses service lines, and we're going to have kill chains that include every element of our joint force plus our coalition partners. So seamlessly being able to move data around is going to require change. So we're going to have to change how we drive and build our networks. Next slide. Leverage data as a center of gravity. That harps on what I just said. Data more than networks. Data, data, data. Nobody cares about your stovepipe network. We heard it yesterday from CDAO during the lunch. Your data has to be visible, accessible, functional, meaning tagged. We can't do that the way we currently fight, the way we currently operate and defend our individual stovepipe networks. We have to move to that data-centric environment so all of our data is seamlessly accessible, whether it's in support of a kill chain or just getting logistics or C2. We have to have that readily accessible to our joint force. That is an overwhelming demand signal that we hear out in Indo-PACOM, but it's across every combatant command. Next, please. So harmonized cybersecurity and user experience. One logon, cybersecurity baked into our processes from the get-go. That goes back to our commanders need to look at that network, that COP, that kill chain data, that logistics data, and trust what they're seeing, that they know our network is secure. And that has to be baked in and engineered from the start. Next. Okay, empower the workforce. And this is not some touchy-feely thing about telling everybody they're special. This is looking at our workforce here, identifying the right people that we need and training them properly and giving them the tools so they can see, operate, and defend the network at speed, at scale, and at a time and place of our choosing so we can support all the commanders. This is vitally important as we recruit the workforce of the future and using our people appropriately and effectively and not spreading them across multiple different networks. Next, please. All right, zooming in a little more tactically at DISA Pacific. So this is me and my chain of command out here. My deputy, Mr. Bruce Morgan, my senior enlisted leader. The third tier down are all my division chiefs out at DISA PAC, from my manpower to my operations, my engineering, my plans, and technical director. And then bookending that level, or that third level, are our data center chief locally and our DITCO PAC lead. The bottom layer are all my field offices spread throughout the theater: Alaska, Guam, Japan, Okinawa, Korea, and I have a field office embedded in the Indo-PACOM J6, as well as my Navy Reserve Det that augments us here in Hawaii. Next, please. Okay, command relationships. I am down at the bottom. I'm the eagle down there. My field offices are below me. I am out here in support of Indo-PACOM. We're out here to operate and defend the Pacific portion of the DODN. So in that regard, my work in support of General Miles, the Indo-PACOM J6, to provide the network in support of Admiral Aquilino, the Indo-PACOM commander, and all the service components underneath them. You see them on the left: User PAC, MAR4 PAC, Compact Fleet, and PAC-AF. My chain of command goes up on the solid line through the right. You see the 3 stars there splitting DISA and JFHQ DODN. That's Lieutenant General Skinner. He wears 2 hats: the director of DISA, where he works for CIO, Honorable Mr. Sherman, and his other hat as the commander of Joint Force Headquarters DODN, where he works for General Nakasone, the commander of Cybercom. And then underneath General Nakasone, you have each one of the larger service cyber components. So it's a complex network and complex chain of command that we work through every day to operate and defend the Pacific portion of the DODN. But it is very much a joint network, and each one of those partners plays a role in operating and defending it. Next. High-level overview of the Indo-PACOM theater. When we look at lessons learned of what's happening in Ukraine and what's happening in Israel right now, there's things that can definitely be applied to this theater. But the biggest difference is the water and the distances in this theater that we have to cover. Europe has the advantage of a lot of first world countries, a lot of solid infrastructure. Communications is difficult but not impossible. It's very difficult in this theater, given the distances that we're covering, the scale of this theater. You know, for those of you that flew from the mainland, it's a 5 or 6 hour flight from the West Coast. It's 9+ to Korea. There's nowhere easy to get to in this theater, and that's during peacetime. So the distances are challenging. Off to the left, you see the number of service members throughout Indo-PACOM, and then the number of service members at Indo-PACOM headquarters, and then a breakdown by each one of the services. Down on the lower left, the other thing that makes this theater significantly different than what's going on in Ukraine is we don't have a NATO, a large treaty organization that we all fall under, that provides one coalition network for us to operate on. Multiple bilateral treaties with multiple countries facilitating the needs for several different types of coalition solutions depending on the capability of each one of our partners. So a lot more complex for terrain, a lot more complex for our alliances, a lot more complex for information sharing. On the right, you see a breakdown of DISA PAC. Once again, a rather small force given the footprint that we cover, and then each one of the flags represent where I have a field office. And then the additional supported locations, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Quad, Wake Island, they're all under my Guam field office. And most likely I'll be spreading that workload around because the second island chain has taken on renewed importance over the last few years, and it's just a large area to cover. Next slide, please. Similar slide, but this time and on the map depicting our DISA points of presence throughout the theater. Japan, Okinawa, Guam, Korea, some of our big permanent enduring sites where we have U.S. forward bases, good presence. Working at increasing our presence in Australia and the Philippines as we align ourselves to what the fight requires. On the left, you see all the different logos for each one of the Indo-PACOM components or sub-unified commands that we support. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is kind of a technical view of how we array our cyber forces across the theater. So down the center of the slide are the 10 DISA internet access points across the globe. 2 here in theater, 1 close by at Hickam, 1 in Yokota. To the left side of the slide is sort of where our offensive cyber DCO forces live. That's not what I do on a daily basis. My work resides on the right side for our DOD and ops, our defensive cyber operations, internal defensive measures, and CSSP services that we provide. That's C2 capability to the commander. So I pretty much live on the right side of the internet access points on a daily basis. High-level overview of the menu of services that DISA writ large provides. Mobility is probably the one that most folks know us for, our classified and unclassified solutions, but Office 365, our 4E&O or DoD network, as well as our cloud-based services. Next, please. Okay. I'll wrap up and I'll turn it over to questions, but before I do, so the piece with the vendors, how to do work with DISA, how to integrate with us, how to start getting your solution in front of us. Listening to General Skinner talk with vendors at an AFCEA event in Baltimore, I think the best thing that you can do, as whether you're an integrator, hardware, software provider, or a consultant, is come to us with a thorough understanding of our O plans and theater. Okay, now a lot of you are probably going, all right, well, I don't have a security clearance, I don't have access to the plan. It's all right. Get a map, look at it. Figure out where Taiwan is, figure out where China is, Japan, Okinawa, Korea, Guam, Australia. Look at the key terrain. Look at where we're going to go. It is a big ocean, but there is a very little amount of key terrain where we're all going to be contested for and trying to fight and get access to. Okay? Look at it. And then ask yourself, what type of comms challenges would you have across this vast ocean with an enemy who is trying to jam, cut your undersea fiber? What kind of challenges would you have to work through? And then start saying, okay, what does my organization provide that can get after those problems? Develop a vignette. This is your problem as I see it. This is what my company does to help work towards that problem. If you can do that, I think you're a leg up. You show immediately how you add value and how you fit into the problem and that you understand the problem. But having that understanding, I think you can make yourself immediately more impactful and valuable to the organization writ large. Okay, went through that a little quick to preserve time for questions, so now I'll turn the floor over to you, and Ms. McMillan and Ms. Woods have also offered to answer any questions related to cloud and DoD net that you have. Okay, and I was asked if we could talk into the microphone for recording, ma'am, so if you wouldn't mind.
My name is Patty Arcano. I'm with Avanti. We are the solution for your DEMA mobilizer. My question, are you consuming all the services from headquarters, or do you have your own programs as well that you are addressing?
I don't have my own programs. Everything I do is nested under what DISA headquarters is doing, whether it's a mobility solution, a cloud solution, DoD net, transport. We are all aligned under what headquarters is doing. What we do is tailor their requirements to what the theater needs. But yes, it's all the same solution. Now, I don't have the resources or funding to do my own thing, which gets back to coming to us as a vendor. What I do for you, I don't have a checkbook that I'm not gonna sign you up to a contract. What I can do if I think you have a valuable product or a valuable capability is advocate for you. Where you really need to be plugged in is on the East Coast. CIO, DISA headquarters, the service systems commands, that field equipment. That's where you really get plugged in at, okay? I'll advocate for you. And most of my peers in this theater, that's pretty much what they can do as well. They might be able to buy small things here and there, but you're looking for a large enterprise-wide solution, you need to be talking to the service systems commands as well as the Pentagon folks. No one-off solutions out here. Once again, really looking for questions from the vendors. I've seen most of these uniform people before, so I'm looking for y'all. Or questions for our senior executives.
So to do business with DISA, one of the things that vendors are told repeatedly is to go to the DISA website and to look for things on the website. 95 to 98% of what's posted on the DISA website requires a DoD Internet CAC card to be able to access the information, even unclassified full and open competition. Is there any other way, such as the small business office or other place where people who are not currently on contract with DISA can obtain that information without an CAC?
Ma'am, I can turn this over to you, but the Mission Partner Engagement Office, I think, is a good chunk of that answer. Do you want to feel? Okay. So yes, we have a Mission Partner Engagement Office back at headquarters to answer your question, ma'am. But yes, I'll take your comment about accessibility without a CAC for our commercial vendors back. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
So as we look at the theater, sir, just what kind of initiatives is DISA working to build up points of presence, you know, in the First Island chain and all those countries that we haven't been to since World War II, that, you know, different places that we probably would end up going back to in the event of some kind of hostilities in the South China Sea?
Okay. First off, there's a lot of infrastructure improvements happening. Some of the things that I deal with regularly are TDM elimination, getting off of the legacy architecture, and upgrading our capabilities. The rest is providing more resilient, survivable, and reliable undersea cable to help minimize the chances of us being isolated. I can't get it down to zero, but minimize that. The other pieces are our cloud solution. You know, what I wrestle with on a daily basis is where is our data located and can we always access it? That's an easy question to answer in Hawaii and CONUS on most days. It's not as easy to answer that in the northern Luzon or parts of Australia or in the southern Ryukyus. So looking at what the service components are doing, where we anticipate them going. Once again, I might not know the exact unit that's going to go to these locations, but I can pick out key terrain because it's pretty obvious. We know somebody will show up there. Having more fidelity on what units are going there helps us tailor our comm requirements and the bandwidth that's out there. But yeah, you're right. We're going back to a lot of locations that we haven't been to in years. Senior Master Sergeant Reinhardt and I walked around on Peleliu as the Marines and Engineer Battalion was out there hacking out the runway that we built in World War II, putting that thing back in order and looking at the comm requirements for Palau, which is very much single-threaded right now, and what we need to do to make a lot of these second island chains more resilient and more survivable in the fight. Just to give you an example, of, since you mentioned it, Palau, they were isolated, the entire country, for 4 days. So post-typhoon in Guam, we had to, the undersea cable provider had to take a circuit down, cut off the entire country of Guam for 4 days, minus some SATCOM. So everywhere we went, I heard that, you know, that for 4 days, people just talked to each other, like the old days. We'd probably have a riot if we had that here in the States. But in time of conflict, that would be a challenge for us, okay? We'll have our SATCOM, our LEO, PLEO, MEO, and GEO solutions, but we need these big undersea cables, these big fat pipes for the bandwidth that we require for full motion video and imagery for a high-tech, high-end fight. So yes, we are looking at that and infrastructure improvement and upgrades across the entirety of the theater, which is where that DITCO team comes in, contracting with the Asian telcos.